welcome. This is July the 5th, 2023, and I have gathered today three artists who were fellows at the Yale Art School in Norfolk, Connecticut in 1971. We have a current exhibition at the Norfolk Historical Society called Shedding Light, 200 Years of Art and Music in Norfolk, Connecticut. One of the aspects of the exhibition is a portfolio which was presented to the museum as a gift by artist Sarah Sutro, who's with us today. And receiving this great donation and artifact is what spurred me on to this idea of showcasing the history of art and music in this amazing little town. There'll be more on that at maybe a different video because it's a long process. But the Battelle family were great patrons of art and music and very philanthropic and promoted art and music to the people of Norfolk for the enlightenment and enjoyment and the culture that it provided. So the formation of the Yale program began in the 1940s after Ellen Battelle Steckel died and left her estate in trust, with the use being given to Yale for a summer program. So back to 1971, we have these artists with us today who were fellows here, as I said. So I'm going to jump over to and let each of you introduce yourselves, and then we will start our little conversation. And why don't we start with Sarah, since you were the inspiration by donating the portfolio.
I'm Sarah Sutro, and I live in the Berkshires in Western Massachusetts, right up in the corner of the state. And I'm still a painter and do drawings and show fairly often. I did spend much of my life in Boston, but I also lived in Asia and briefly in California. So I've had a very interesting life, but look forward to this conversation.
Barbara?
Hi, I'm Barbara Mackey. I managed to win a scholarship to come to Yale from Edinburgh in Scotland, in the UK, and that was a long time ago, but here we are all again, meeting old friends, and that's a wonderful thing. So I still live in the Edinburgh area, although I've lived in other places, and I would say I've had a portfolio career because I've earned money by teaching others or showing demonstrations as well as showing art. And I think maybe that happens to a lot of artists. So anyway, looking forward to this interaction. Long may it continue.
Good. And Sue.
Okay, I'm Sue Hetmansberger, and I came to the Yale program from the University of New Mexico, which was quite a different atmosphere from Yale, and I learned a great deal from that. I was lucky to be chosen as actually they chose someone else before me, and then that person dropped out, and I was thrilled to be able to do this because something like this can launch an entire career and inspire one to achieve greater knowledge through the medium of art. And I feel like I've done that for myself and for my students. I taught many years, probably 40 years at the University of Iowa. So that's where I landed ultimately. And art has been tremendously enriching to my life. And the art I was making then, I think I was searching for making a case for the reverence and primacy of the natural world. And I'm still doing that today.
Okay. Great. Well, welcome and thank you, Paul, for joining me on this little interview. I think it'll be kind of a fun thing. I have been in conversation with the current directors of the art program, and I had about 20 of the fellows came to the museum on last Monday, this past Monday, and to see the exhibit, and it was fun to sort of listen to them. They all loved the group photograph that we have of your class hanging on the wall, and got very excited about that, and have vowed to recreate the scene, so to speak. And one of the students asked if she got me the copy, would I hang it up on the wall with next to the 1971 version, which of course I'd love to do. I think that would be so much fun to bring the present into the exhibition. So let's, I'm going to sort of put out a couple of questions or thoughts to have us give us some guidelines for some discussion, because I'm curious to hear your recollection about the program and how it affected you. So one of the and I guess I should preface this all to the viewing audience here, that we the three of us have had some previous discussions, so just leading up to this interview, so we know I have a little bit of knowledge of some of the ideas and memories that you're wanting to or willing to share with us today. And one of those comments came about enjoying the music that you heard from the music students who were here at the same time. Currently, the program is a bit more separated, although there was a crossover week this past week of new music, a new music program. They have, I think, 7 or 8 young composers who come and work for a week. And so that's the only overlap now is that 1 week with the new music, and that ends in a concert, which was last Friday night, which was phenomenal. The students that presented, that their work was just amazing. And the weekend prior to that, the art students also had an open studio, which was lots of fun. And so it still integrates with the town, which is very nice. But another change is from when you were here, you were staying with families, and now Yale has elected to keep all the fellows on campus, as it were. So that's sort of changed a little bit of the feeling with becoming part of the town. So let's maybe some comments about your memories of your time here and your how the program was set up for you.
Well, I remember frequent nighttime concerts that were delivered. I don't know if my memory is exact on that, but I remember sitting there and dreaming into the music, dreaming images into the music, and trying to, internalize sound and visual phenomena. And I remember the sounds of the students practicing during the day, but we didn't get to know them that well.
Yeah.
Well, I remember on Sunday afternoons, there would either be a concert or some sort of performance by the students, and being up in the studios and painting and just feeling like this is idyllic. I can't believe the windows were open, the music was coming up through our space, and I love that. And actually, I did get to know some of the music students. I think we all ate together, and I think also there was a mixture of music and art students in the houses where we lived. So I didn't get to know them well, but I liked them a lot, and I was really impressed with the quality of their work.
Yeah, I don't really remember too much about exactly what our interaction was with the music, but I remember going to a concert at the end, and also one young lady musician whose name sadly I have forgotten, actually invited me into her parents' home in New York on my way back, where I had a gap of days before I got my flight. So that was incredibly generous, and in some ways I lost an opportunity to mix with them as much as I might.
Well, I suppose you're there to focusing on your work too. I mean, that's you'd all been chosen to come to the program, and as we know, that's it's a special thing, as Sue had mentioned. So I guess your main focus was your work. So why don't we talk about some of your memories about the faculty that was memorable to you? I know you've each seem to have sort of different folks, some in common, but some other separate memories too. So let's go into that little segment.
Well, I was very impressed by William Bailey, who I think was just a visiting critic for us. He's a major person at the Yale in the main male campus, but he came through and he was so sensitive. And I remember him telling me, "Don't let anyone tell you that you have to work large." I thought that was interesting because I was working in kind of tiny canvases, and I thought that was unique. And David Pease, I think, was our painting teacher. And he was a very imaginative guy. I loved his work. He was very interested in dreams and childhood and toys. And I just remember his influence. He was just kind of there in a very positive way. The third person was Walter Rosenblum. We actually all got 2x2 double, I think they were double reflex cameras to work with for the summer, and just learned so much from him about that. And then we actually developed our own prints, which was incredible. And Yale provided all the materials. So that was a big part of the summer, I think, because I wandered around the estate taking pictures of gardens and cabbages and trees and fields. And so that gave me a lot of the material for what it did. It was excellent.
So the photography was integrated into the. Were you all fine art painting? Were you all in painting, I guess would be the.
I was in everything, printmaking mostly, and but we worked in all of the media there. Okay. And I also had done a lot of 4x5 photography and went all over the campus, and that's why I was captivated by Paul Caponegro when he came and gave a lecture on his work. Really incredible photographer. And William Bailey also, I think every young artist loves William Bailey's paintings and drawings. They're so intimate and sensitive and yet universal at the same time. And I remember us striking up a conversation and a friendship with Robert Reed, in which he would poke me to do better. And I liked that I saw that I was probably not one of the most accomplished students there. And he helped prod me toward more excellence. His work was about post and lintel structures, and that stuck with me, that he was thinking about the beginnings of architecture and human development. And I thought that was a very profound thing for him to be researching. So, and Brian Kay, Joy Dybule, they were both, I think, junior faculty.
Yes, I remember them too. Joy was a lot of fun in the hours we weren't in printmaking. She was a good companion. And Brian was an excellent technician. Had done a little bit of etching and things like that before, and a bit of lithography, but he was really good. And again, I look back and I think perhaps I could have spent a little bit more time making prints. I found Walter Rosenblum a really, really nice person. He was he was asking me about, coming from further away and how was I feeling, and he was really taking that little bit of pastoral care, which was very nice. And he asked me if I'd come back to the States, and I said, "Oh, I didn't know." We were young, we really were, I think, young. And so you just didn't know, this was an experience that you hadn't expected. So yeah, so who else? Well, I had a little bit of rough and tumble, perhaps, with the people that oversaw drawing, and drawing was always my strength. And I think I was being made to draw on big sheets of paper, and I wasn't very happy about it. And well, I have this theory that people do that. They give a little bit of rough and tumble to see if you could just say it, back. I'll show them. I'll do something. I'm going to do something. And so it's not necessarily it's not necessarily negative. So I can't really remember the visiting tutors too much in painting. I think someone, it may have been William Bailey, who said to me that I drew very naturally, but I painted with a capital P, which was something I wrote down, but I don't know how much difference it's made to my life. Yeah,
it's a great comment.
It is. I've written down a lot of things that people say, like in just a sentence, because they make you reflect and think. Well, it's like anyone you might meet who says something that somehow stays with you. So good to write these things down. I remember Gabor Peterdy, the printmaker, and I bought his lovely book. And I wish, in a way, in my life, I've done a lot more printmaking, but it takes a bit of organization to be near all the hardware that you need. So not as easy as drawing and painting, perhaps, to get to do. But these are mostly what I remember. I can't even remember too many of the lectures. Maybe I was just a little bit dreamy or something, and I was in my own mind and wasn't really taking in too much of what was happening in that way.
Our hot, humid New England air had you stifled.
I wanted to mention Chuck Close as well, who was just a visiting artist. And
well, was a little bit, that's right. He was a bit, I think he was the one that had really unsettled me in the drawing. And I think that I've had tutors in Edinburgh who do that. They just think, that it's not good for us to think that we're special and that we've achieved a lot already. It's good for us to feel, oh gosh, maybe I need to try harder. So it has a benefit.
Yeah, he was kind of hard line, and I was quite shocked. He came into my little studio area and just told me, well, as an artist, you just go in like a bricklayer and do your work all day long and then leave. And it's impersonal and don't get attached to it. And I was, at the time, that wasn't at all how I experienced going to my studio. But over time, I totally understand what he's saying, because you need the perseverance, the hard work, and some detachment to keep going in this career. So it was very helpful.
That was Chuck Close?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I remember the last Zoom that we had, I mentioned something that just stuck brilliantly with me was when he gave his lecture, he showed a short film that he did in which he took the camera lens and came right up close, like a few inches away from a head, and followed the terrain of that head to slowly reveal in an unusual way the sense of that head. And it taught me a lot about seeing things freshly, like no one would think to depict a head from half an inch away in a film, but the film illuminated the rest of his career to me, and it was an aha moment for learning to try to see things freshly and in a new way.
If I can come in on that point, I did go to a few museums in New York, and I saw Matisse really close up, and I thought it was full of dribbly paint, and I thought it doesn't really look like that when it's photographed and and placed in a book's page, and that just taught me that, you know, scale is a massively important thing. And also seeing Rothko work close up was really amazing. The Guggenheim and modern art, and forget the other one. But I really enjoyed seeing the museums in New York.
You've kind of given us the answers to your influential teacher, faculty, and visiting artists. What about, let's go back to the program a little bit. So you all, did you all stay in the same house? No, you were not all together.
No.
Sarah and Barbara, you were in with the same family.
We were. Yeah.
Aaron,
Yes, I think I was on a third floor. I don't know how you count your floors. I think America, you count floors differently. But anyway, I think it was up 2 different flights of stairs. I think it was on the top of that house, which was extremely lovely. The little bedroom was very nice. Yeah.
I was in a different house, and I remember making best friends with Gwen Gugel. She was from California, and we would go to breakfast together.
Yes. I think one of the things about different to Scotland is that I have a shower in the morning and walk to breakfast, and used to love this balmy air drying my long hair. I used to think that was quite a nice sensation to go to breakfast in that way.
I really liked staying in a house because it made me feel that I had a life there, and I was walking through neighborhoods and past the beautiful library and that circle, you know, where the roads all come together. And it was just a nice relationship between the town and the place where we worked and stayed all day, the estate.
What was the feeling of the program for all of you? Was it, did you feel it was it was competitive for each of you? You were striving on your own, or you were aware of the others, what other people were doing, or you really just focused on your own work?
I was focused inwardly on my own work, and trying to find out what I wanted to say as a human being in the world. I came across a quote of Suzanne Langer, "What life feels like to the living." And the natural world has always been deeply personal, and sort of deep ecology has interested me. So I think it was an inward journey, more so than an outward journey. I didn't make as many friends because I was shy, and I just had a couple of people that I would talk to. Gary Burnley, Gary Panter, and Gwen Gugel were, and Sarah, I think you too. So I think it taught me a lesson that I was from a small pond, and this was a large ocean of ideas and people and accomplishments, and it made me humble and glad that I was there to learn.
Yeah, and I feel like we were kind of all amazed and honored to be there, as you're suggesting, Sue. And that was where the competition came in. I didn't feel any competition with people we were working with, because we were all so engaged. There was just so much to do with 4 classes in 8 weeks, and they were essentially college classes. So we were just working all the time and taking some breaks and taking walks and having wonderful movies at night that we watched together, and good meals. But it was, yeah, and we were also all going into our senior year in college. So we were really thinking, what is it that I want to do, and how can I focus, and how can I use what these amazing developed artists are saying to me. So it was interesting that I don't think competition ever came up for me anyway.
Well, and I think it was genius of them to put us together as juniors, who could go back to our institutions and bring back the knowledge that we had gained to the original institution that we came from. So that it was a pivotal moment in our career, and it was it disseminated knowledge in a great way when we came back and were seniors in our home turf.
Yeah, I think I was a bit unsettled by it, but I think the college I was at, I was working in a steeped manner, I was deep in it. And to go to Yale was like, oh, what's this? This is different. And it was quite pastoral, and I'm not sure if, it was greenery and everything. And I'm not sure if that was the right thing. I probably needed something like the cities or something that was a little bit more hyperactive, because I kept losing my direction, not being sure what I was doing. I don't think it was competitive between us as artists. I think it was that I was interested in when people looked like they were fully occupied and knew exactly what they were doing. I was thinking, I wonder how they're managing that. And I think there was a bit of variety. I think some people felt unsettled and other people were happy to be doing what they had in mind. So it opened me up, but it was hard to go back, actually. I found it very hard when I went back. I found I didn't feel I fitted very well back where I went. So maybe it wasn't the right time for me. Maybe a year earlier or a year later would have been perfect. But, you don't know these things. So
Interesting. Anyone else want to sort of pose a question or to the group?
Well, I think you've asked us how it has influenced our life since then, or our career, and I've really thought about that a lot. And I think for me, it was more a sort of attitude, like if I could do this, if I could be so bold as to go among these people from Yale and these artists coming up from New York City who had huge careers, I could do just about anything. I mean, it just gave me tremendous confidence, and that they took me seriously. It was a real boost, I think, in that way. Not so much that I had a specific teacher, because I'd had a very important teacher back at Cornell where I was, who helped me a lot. But it was just that sense of, oh my God, I'm right on the threshold of entering this art world and this life. And I was so taken with how seriously the artists, who were teaching us and who were visiting took their artwork, and, they had devoted their lives to it. And that felt like what I wanted to do. So that was all very powerful.
Yeah, I think it gave us a sense of the enormity of philosophical questions, and that particular time in America was full of foment and questioning and reevaluation of what was important, and it just gave me a sense of making meaning in the world as being primary, and that I really wanted a life of ideas and philosophy and innovation and learning. And so I saw the art process as a way of learning for oneself, and also giving back a reimagined worldview. And so it just opened up what an idealistic future. I was so lucky to have done it, and it seemed to open doors later in my career as a person, a young female from New Mexico. I think not too many people would have paid attention to me if I hadn't experienced that and didn't have it on my resume. I think it really tended to shape the rest of the career.
Yes, I think what influenced me was that it was a small town. It was rural. It felt rural to me. And yet I saw these iconic things like the the burger sign with all the different fillings, which is something I'd never seen. And so coming from Scotland at that time, I think that a lot of the icons that I picked up through music, suddenly I saw them in reality, which was very interesting. You know, listening to songs like Dylan's songs or Joni Mitchell, any of those people, you know, you get the sense of America, and it was very real in the music when I listened to it. But then when I've been to America, I understood much more, and I thought such an enormous place to go and travel and pick up all that information, and not just, well, people say we're much more like the Americans now, which we probably are, but there's so much travel and so much culture that we see on, you know, our media. But I do think at that time it was quite shocking for me, and it was a big change. I don't think I'd ever been out of the UK. I'd been in England a bit because one of my parents was English, the other was Scots, and so actually going to London on a train, getting on a plane and coming to JFK, I thought JFK was enormous compared to Edinburgh Airport, which was like a shack. And and then I had to navigate the yellow taxis and the Greyhound buses. And then, you know, when I got to Yale, it was a Wednesday night and it was barbecue or something. Bob Reed said, you know, I looked a bit like a mouse. Like, I think, well, I'd just been too much going on in one day. But it is quite nice putting that together now, because I know, you know, I know a lot more because I've been there. I know Greyhound buses, and, you know, the heating or the cooling wasn't working, and, you know, I know a lot more things about America than I would have had I not been on that journey. So, yeah.
Greyhound buses are probably still the same 50 years later, Barbara.
Yeah,
If
miserable.
you come back, we'll arrange a different mode of transportation for you. Some things have improved.
You also asked about what thing cemented the community together or created a sense of the community. I think, you know, us sitting together on the lawn, some of those photos, just, you know, at lunch or something, creating a sense of community. But I think creating that for portfolio together, I remember everybody was, you know, pushing for that, getting it done. It's a joint effort, and everyone was commenting on everyone's submission. And I remember getting lots of critical comments on my submission, and the fact that we were all making that together, and that Gary Panter put together all of these frames. I think he actually made those frames. He became he's a well-known artist in New York now, and he put all the pieces together, and we each took this book home that represented everyone's vision. And I think that was a unifying factor. And so that it makes sense that that's the center of the discussion and brought us together again.
Yeah,
I would agree with that.
Yeah.
Great. So I mean, Sarah's portfolio obviously now resides at the Norfolk Historical Society, but do the two of you still have your portfolios?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yes, absolutely. As I
Great.
say, all the paperwork and all the bits and pieces stayed in a small suitcase, and just whenever I moved home, they moved as well. And I never wanted to get rid of them, and sometimes I would look and read the letter, put them away again. Never dreamed that we would have this connection.
Yeah, well, there we go. The Zoom world. It's changed lots of things. Do you have a memorable moment from your stay here?
Well, I love the fireflies. I was thinking of fireflies in the dusk, you know, when it got dark. I thought they were they were like magic. That's what I thought.
Well, they are, and the location, the topography of the campus is just perfect for fireflies, between the streams and the sort of you know, there's an old mill pond back of where the music shed and all that open field. So it's just ideal for So I can imagine there, with all the lights low, the fireflies would be quite memorable there.
And I did go swimming in the lake one day with some others, so you remember that.
Wow. Good for you.
Old
I
Toby
didn't.
Pond, that's a bit of a hike from the. You
I
must
can't
have
remember, but I know one of the Garys had a limousine that I got to sit in the front, slide around the leather seats, and I think we also took me to a different state because I wasn't quite 21, and we had some beer or something. But maybe he drove us. I don't remember it being a hike. Yeah.
Drinking age was different. Oh, maybe in Massachusetts.
Different in different states. Yeah, because
Then
I think for me, it was just what I said before, the combination of music and art and nature was just so overpowering. You know, I just once in a while I would just think this is just such a beautiful place and I'm having this experience. So it wasn't one moment, but it was a succession of moments.
that makes sense.
I think the diversity of people coming together was a seminal influence to me. I had never been around so much diversity. Coming from where I was, there were a lot of Hispanics and Native Americans, but I didn't have a full sense of what it would be like to be on the East Coast and the kind of diversity of ideas and of people and backgrounds. I was just, I learned a lot from people like Gary Burnley, who comes from a diverse background. And I think that was great for teaching us the humanity of everyone in no matter, you know, what form you come in, you all experience the same human emotions. And I think that was a real learning process for me.
Well, and there's that the thoughts, Sarah, you had a thought about the feeling of an artist colony.
Yeah, well, you know, since that time, I was, and at different times in my life, I would get accepted into art colonies, mostly on the East Coast, but other places as well. And it just occurred to me this morning, we were at an art colony, you know, which is a place where you really focus on your work, and sometimes you're, you know, surrounded by beauty, so that's helpful, and you sort of experience life as perfection in a way. And I do remember that also Walter Rosenblum said to me at one point, you know, this place is Eden, so appreciate it and enjoy it. But it's just interesting to think. So when we were young, 20 or 21, we got to experience being in an art colony where all the respect was there, and the, you know, encounters with people, and then just the general environment was amazing. So that helps me sort of place what that experience was.
I think that's true. It was an early eye opener for someone. You know, when you're a junior in college, you are just forming things together and just putting things together in your sense of who you are and what you think is important in the world and what you'd like to work on for the rest of your life. And so to have that intensity of contact with all these other brilliant people at that moment meant that you could come back in your senior year and really flower and then move on to graduate school. It gave you the sense of the opportunities that could lie ahead for you in a way that you would not have had in the limited range of where you grew up or where you came from.
yes, I think my experience was different because the work that my father did, you know, we were actually housed in communities where there were some difficulties and so on. And I think also different culture from my father's background, my mother's background. I did feel that that was the opposite of that for me, but I certainly felt the difference in actually distance and being away from things that were familiar. That was quite shocking. So I wouldn't say I was lonely. It wasn't lonely. It was just it felt foreign in the sense that I did feel as if I was far from home. I was quite homesick after 4 weeks, and then I got over that. But yeah, it's interesting what you say. Yeah.
Mhm.
And I just wanted to say that as a result of knowing Barbara and also Lisa Ridley, who was from London, I cooked up this idea of going to graduate school in England, partly because it was very cheap to live there and I got a scholarship. So I paid nothing for my graduate degree. And I was nervous about going into debt in the United States because you can go into debt really quickly. And somehow knowing them, I looked them both up, and Barbara and I saw each other many times. I took the train to Edinburgh. It really was a gift to me, to be able to make that happen. So that came out of Norfolk too.
Yeah, I remember connecting up in the future with Gary Panter. I invited him to be a visiting artist here at the University of Iowa. And Gary Burnley, I connected up with in the future, as well as with Gwen Gugel in California. So it gave an expanded sense of art contacts in the larger world.
Great. So the program really has touched your whole lives, which is
I think for me, it was the kickstart of everything. And I feel, as a university teacher, you look at students and you see their accomplishments. And if you see that someone is doing something out of the ordinary and is accomplished, you're more likely to prod them along toward even more, and allow them more things. I think in terms of getting grants in the future, I feel like I got a few grants because I had that on my list, and it just so grateful for that.
Yeah, I feel as if also the teachers at Yale were sort of a model for me, because I also had a teaching career for 30 years, but I taught at several different places. But their seriousness and their connection to students and willingness to see what you were doing for how it came from you is something that stayed with me. And I loved working with students that whole time. And I do think that having Yale on my resume made a difference. I didn't get every grant I applied for, but I did get a few grants.
Yeah,
and people have always been very impressed. Anytime you mentioned being connected to Yale, there was a lot of, like, wow, that's exciting.
We were lucky. We were extremely lucky.
Were you ever taken into the White House, we call it here, which is the family home of the Battels? It's the sort of centerpiece of the estate, faces the town green. And because Robbins Battelle in the mid 19th century was a great collector of American art, and the gallery is full of several many paintings by major artists of the day. And when I was speaking with the current art students, and actually we have on display in the museum a 19th century photograph of the art gallery, and the program, they hadn't been into the space, which really kind of amazed me. I would think that would be the first place you would bring the art students, to say, here's the history of art on this property. And it's right there. It's a little museum right there. So do you ever take
No, I don't think we went, actually.
I don't know. We weren't.
Fascinating to me that doesn't occur, because, and it obviously still doesn't.
Really?
The White House was always the residence for the music director, and I think maybe the music department kind of used the White House a bit more than art ever did. But it just, and maybe it was the time period. Well, I guess if they're still not doing it, so maybe maybe it's the time period. It was all more about the contemporary art world. But it strikes me as I'm looking at our exhibition that Robbins Patel was commissioning contemporary artists. He wasn't, they weren't copies of the great masters in Europe. They were, Thomas Eakins and Frederick Church, and his biggest commission really was with Thomas Hovenden, which is a very maybe not a well-known artist because his career was so short. But there's a very famous painting of Hovenden's that hangs in the Metropolitan Museum of Art called The Last Moments of John Brown. And it was commissioned by Robbins Patel, and it actually hung at White House for many years. And it was that painting, along with another Hovenden painting, and that, Robbins would open his gallery up to the people of Norfolk to show them fine art and what the art world was all about. So, hence I think that's why the daughter then develops this idea of Yale bringing art, music, and literature to her estate and using it. So it seems to be the foundation, and it's just a surprise that none of you have were brought to see it.
No.
Well, we could change that. You could all come over, and maybe they'd let me bring you in. But
yeah,
it's a magical place. Okay, any other thoughts? Somebody you want to put out?
I just hope that we will all remain in contact, and perhaps going forward that this small group. I remember both of you, and I remember you both fondly, but I didn't get to know you as well as I had hoped, and maybe we will continue in the future to to share ideas.
That would be.
Well, I think that's a must. We must do that because
must do that.
We have that shared early years.
Yeah. We could each send
each other
JPEGs of our work and talk about it a little bit to one another as a way of carrying on the tradition.
Well, some of the others may wish to also interact. Some may not, but some may wish to have that. We could have I don't know how you would do it, but just maybe join
growing Zoom. Yeah.
Growing Zoom.
Growing Zoom meeting. We'll just put it out there and let people join in if they.
Having a Zoom with.
It's a great idea.
Or just an email chain in which you could contact people.
Yeah.
Or topics or anything like that we can share. Yeah.
Well, Barbara, I'm going to put you on the spot just for a second, because one of our early emails that you and I exchanged, that you and I had, you mentioned an idea that you were working on about connecting.
Yes.
Or connecting with women or an artist that you'd known. I just thought that was sort of a fascinating idea, and so reaching out to you, and it just seems so poignant at the moment.
Yeah. Well, I've got some little sketches, and interestingly, I have a sketch here which came from my sketchbook. So it's actually torn out my sketchbook at Yale, and you can see that the lady with the long hair, this is actually Sarah. And then this is Marsha, and the picture I sent you, I found of our exhibition. You can see that the painting I did was from this artwork, which I had completely forgotten about. But anyway, the idea is that when you come back and you meet people that certainly happens to a lot of women when they. Or careers, careers can take you away, or families, from your original drive and direction, and you eventually migrate back towards it. So I thought to myself, this is a wonderful thing. So when I've been, I had a friend in Norway that I lost touch with, so she was found again, and so we went to see her. Her artist friend joined us, and they were just talking, and I saw the bodies, the sort of interaction, I thought this is a start of something, because I've always enjoyed doing figurative work, but this seems like a natural development. And so I've been pulling together any sort of drawings I've got that would suggest it could blend into it or be another branch of it. So I think that's going to keep me going for quite a long time. And I have a couple of other ideas which are more based on physical things. Like I went to Canada and I saw the cedar forest, and I was really enamored by the scale of the trees and the color, the cedar color. And so there are still some very, you were talking about things, Sue, to do with the landscape, and I'm a great drawer of trees, but equally, I think this human one is good. It seems appropriate this time of life, and after our discussions, is, the communality is the word, maybe, of things you did as a young person and your natural interests, where you get pulled in all sorts of ways and gradually migrate back to something. It's a kind of circle, I suppose.
Well,
So
yeah, that's really interesting. It makes me think of I've always been interested in how form arrives in nature through physics and tension and space and the tensile attraction of one energy to another. And it would be really interesting to pass around a drawing by sending it through the mail that we all collaborated on. People do. I know people who do that, and they respond then to the other person's markings on the drawing, and then you have like a dialogue within that drawing.
That sounds good.
Nice idea. Yeah.
You could start that, Sue.
You can start it. Yeah.
Yeah. Yes.
Thank you for asking us today, though, to be here.
You're welcome. I'm thrilled that you all said yes. I'm sort of, with slight trepidation, fired off that first email to Barbara. I mean, I knew I'd get back in touch with Sarah because we'd met back in 2020, wasn't it? So it was just before the pandemic.
I think so. Yeah, I was trying to remember that too, but yeah, then there was a gap because nobody was traveling.
There was a gap because of the, but I think you had contacted me in like the winter or December of 2019, and then we just kind of met before everything got strange. So,
I'm amazed at it. The first email you sent me, I looked today, was the 2nd of June, and I think that's a whole 5 weeks, and yet it seems to have occupied my mind the whole time. And I think, is it 10 days? Is it 3 weeks? And I think, gosh, it's 5 weeks. So
yeah,
really good. I do appreciate the fact that, I feel like a sleeping monster that's been woken back up again, and lots of things I had just stopped thinking about have come back up to the surface. So.
Right. Well, that's good. After half a century.
Here's to the next half century.
There you go. And do you all want to have a closing statement that you'd like to share, to wrap this up, or?
I could say that I learned about positive and negative space at the Yale program. That was something that I hadn't fully internalized in my primary school, in the school that I came from. And positive and negative space is this underlying concept in art that in the 20th century that is so important. And I was just amazed that I didn't know that before then, and now I think about it every day.
Yeah, so very influential.
Yeah. Well, I really like pulling all the threads of that time together, and it's actually made me think about for instance, in photography, I used to wander back to this vegetable garden that I found that I assume was part of the estate. And I took photographs of these cabbages growing with their huge, gorgeous leaves and dark spaces. And I realized I'm still interested in that now because a lot of my work is about nature too. And how remarkable that I was so unconscious then in a way, so undeveloped. But there were things that came to me as a result of being there that continue today. So anyway, I'm just glad to know you all and to have this process that we've been through of looking back. It's been wonderful.
Well, I think that being at the museums and art galleries was good. What taught me that, you know, that scale is incredibly important and has a huge impact on your art and your appreciation of art. And so the thing is to go somewhere where you don't have to go around the whole exhibition, just go somewhere, look at something that appeals to you and just go really close and look at the surface of it and all that sort of thing. The very sort of tactile aspect of art. Yeah.
Great. Good. Well, I think this was a wonderful conversation. We can think about another one or adding on to this as part 2 if we can collect some of your other fellows who we can find along the way. I know some of you have, Sue, you said you've got some contacts for some of the other folks.
Yeah, through Facebook too.
Start a little, see if we can get a chain going and maybe have a second conversation.
Okay.
It'd be fun to add some other stories to your time here at Norfolk. And I thank you very much again for joining me in this little project. And I'm looking forward to seeing how we can piece this all together and make it part of the story and the history of this wonderful program that
Absolutely
really
thank you so much.
Holds a
all
special
of you.
place in the town.
Yeah.
So it's really neat. So thanks again.